All right, guys. Final Score is back with another interview. You guys know, and I'm representing tonight. It's playoff week, and I'm representing TJ tonight. Uh, Whether he gets a sack record or not, I don't know. They're still got it out there with they filed a grievance or whatever to try to get that sack. We'll keep our fingers crossed, but he did tie the record. But you know how much I love the Steelers, and anytime I get a chance to interview a former Steeler. And, we got a guy that's tonight that's not only a former Steeler, but he played in Chapel Hill, played in ACC country right down the road from us. So with me tonight is former Tar Heel and former Steeler offensive line Kyle Jolly. Welcome to the show, Mr. Jolly. How you doing, bud?
I'm doing fantastic. How you doing?
Oh, we're good. We're good. We were just talking a little bit before we came on about bulletin board material flying everywhere in Kansas City right now. I think they're coming up with one every day. No respect for Pittsburgh this week. And just remember, Kansas City, if you do come up on the short end of the stick, you poked the bear. You added fuel to the fire. You did all that stuff and I know your coach, I know Andy Reid, from what I see of him, is probably not too happy about that. And I mean, you said the same thing. You don't want to do that anytime in the NFL, much less playoff time.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Whenever it comes to it's questioning guys' pride, and you never want to do that. You never want to give them any more incentive than they already need. And we kind of talked about it as well. We'll see if Big Ben's got any more magic left in that arm, so he can finish this thing out right.
I'll tell you what, they put me through the ringer this past Sunday with the Ravens game. And then, oh man, and then when you think, okay, we got to have Jacksonville beat the Colts, didn't think that was going to happen. That happens. And then all you got to do is not have the Chargers and the Raiders tie. So I'm watching the game. Raiders are up by like 15. So I doze off. I wake up 4 minutes left in overtime and it's tied up and the Raiders got the ball deep in their own territory. And I'm like, these fools are going to end up tied up and we're not going to make the playoffs. And of course, there was talk that the Raiders were going to kneel and let it be a tie. They didn't want to take a chance kicking a field goal, get it blocked, which I think would have been a wuss move to do something like that. But anyway, especially when you're playing your division rival like the Chargers and the Raiders. But, you got to get in the playoffs. I understand that. But what's your thoughts on that? Would you, as a coach now, playing your big rival, if you beat them, you go to the playoffs. But if you tie, both of you go to the playoffs. What's your call there?
So as a competitor, obviously you want to win, but what's the ultimate goal? Like your ultimate goal is playoffs and get to the Super Bowl. So if you can live with a tie and get to the playoffs, then that's the way to go. Because there's always some chance that it gets blocked, taken back, or it's a shank kick and they return it. And based on what I saw, the Raiders were going to run it out, and then they got the timeout call, and they were like, all right, well, now it's the same thing you're talking about with the Chiefs and the Steelers, where they're kind of poking the bear. They call that timeout, and it's like they're poking the bear, and they're like, okay, call us on our block. We're going to kick it, and now you can't go.
I thought, but then even then, after they called the timeout, I was like, and the Raiders started running the clock. I was like, they're not going to call a timeout, kick the field goal. But luckily, they did it. But let's talk a little bit about you. Growing up in Powhatan, Virginia, I'm sure you grew up a football fan. Who did you pull for when you were a kid?
So I grew up. I was actually a Detroit Lions fan. More of a Barry Sanders fan.
Right.
So kind of grew up, and I watched the game, and he kind of stuck in my mind. So since then, I was a Lions fan, and then after college and after the league, I just root for my buddies or my coaches that I know. Don't really have a team now, but.
So you played at Blessed Sacrament Huguenot. What other sport? Were there any other sports besides football that you played?
Yeah, so I played football, played basketball, played lacrosse, and I was a swimmer. Believe it or not, I was on a swim team from age 3 to 17. So my mom was actually my swimming coach too. So I actually have a lot of swimming in my blood. But yeah, basketball and lacrosse are my two other sports that I kind of played a lot of. So
I have some kids that I coach that will say, we need to start a lacrosse team. And I'm like, you can barely, small private school, you can barely get a football team together. I don't know if you can get a lacrosse team together, but lacrosse is kind of, I've watched some lacrosse. That takes a lot of physical ability too.
it's definitely takes some coordination, but again, for football, it's a physical game, and so is lacrosse. And I've actually had my biggest hits in lacrosse.
Right.
Uh,
Oh, wow.
much because it's less equipment, and
Yeah.
as soon as you open up the game and restrict some of the move or unrestrict some of the movement, where it's a lot of just up and down and fast paced moving, and there's no time to reset for plays, it could be some gruesome hits.
Yeah,
So
I can imagine. So when did you know that football was going to be what took you to the next level? What was there a moment where you said, okay, this is what's going to move me, get me to the next level in college?
I kind of just grew up loving the game of football. I played since age 5. Whether I was, you can ask some of the Pee Wee guys I played with, they're probably like, they were going to guess me last as the guy that would go play college football. I was always that tall, lanky guy that was a little uncoordinated. And eventually, probably around my sophomore, junior, I started to grow into my body and knew how to use it a little bit. But it took me a while to understand that. But I made a goal my freshman year and wrote it down on a piece of paper, put it in my up against my mirror in my bathroom, and said, "Hey, I want to get a scholarship to go play college football." And I ended up being successful at it. So
What was, as far as football goes, what was your favorite high school memory, your favorite game or something like that? Something that happened in a game that was your favorite thing you go back on and say, I remember, I wish I could go back and relive that moment again.
it's necessarily one moment, but when you look at my high school career, we were a small little private like where you coach at, and didn't have a lot of people, and they were terrible, historically terrible when I started there, and then my ninth grade year, we ended up being 3-6 or 3-7. I think a hurricane rained out one game, but then my final 3 years, we went to 3 state championship games back to back to back, and we lost. We lost the first one, but then we won the final two. And then actually, my cousin came over for his senior year, my senior year, and so we ended up winning it together. So that was my last game in high school. So that was kind of cool,
Yeah,
as well
that's
as my
always.
dad being my coach. So
Oh, wow. That had to be cool there with, and it's always nice to end your career with a win too. A lot of people don't get to do that. So you're getting, I'm sure you're getting recruited. What schools were after you to come play college football for you?
so for me, it was mainly a bunch of FCS schools. So I had some other like FBS schools that were looking at me early on. A lot of them said they had a bunch of players like me. Some in-state teams that were Power Five or are Power Five looked at me and said, "Yeah, we like you, but we got a bunch of guys like you. We're going to pass on you." So I went to camps and got some interest, and some of those bigger schools stayed with me a little bit longer and kind of just wanted to see what I developed into, because I didn't turn 18 until actually summer school going into my freshman year in college. So I was a younger guy, and so I was, like I said, I was undeveloped, a lighter guy as far as that goes. But I had a bunch of FCS, so a bunch of the Virginia FCS, so the JMU's, the William and Mary's, the University of Richmond's, the VMI's, Norfolk State, those type teams were the ones that were interested in me. UNC stayed with me, going through camps and kind of just kept their eye on me, I think I was a plan B guy for them because they didn't offer me until after my senior season. And that's when I jumped on board with them.
Okay. All right. So first impressions at Chapel Hill. What was it like when you stepped on campus the first time?
So it was a camp in May or June going into my senior year, and I walked on campus and I just fell in love. And whether it was just everything about it wasn't just, it was the entire campus. It was Keenan Stadium. It was the Dean Dome. It was the history about it, the Carolina Blue, all of it. I went there and left that camp saying, Dad, hey, I want to go to school here. And he was like, well, I ain't paying for it, so you better go get a scholarship. And so that's where my focus turned, and just was striving to get that.
So Coach Bunton was your first coach there. What was it like playing for John Bunton, former Carolina player there? And he kind of started off doing real well, but what was it like playing for with Coach Bunton?
I love Coach Bunton. He gave me my first chance. He's just a great human being, great man, truly cares deep about Carolina. But so much so that I invited him to my wedding. He wasn't able to come,
Wow.
but just he had that much of an impact on me. And I can never thank him enough, because he was the one that kind of started me off in this journey. So he's just an amazing guy. And just hearing some of his stories from back in the day, and then just hearing stories from about Carolina, actually about the Eagles and all those things, it was just awesome to be able to listen to that.
Okay, so I asked this for anybody time I get somebody up here, and I'll ask you later on about another one too. What was it like the first time you come out in Keenan Stadium dressed in Carolina blue? What was it like coming out to that crowd?
Just amazing. So obviously our students sat right on top, and so all you hear is kind of feet stomping. You hear them banging on the tarp that's leading out of the tunnel, and it was just awesome. And we always just rock back and forth saying, "Let us loose, coach, loose, coach," and it was just awesome. And you get chills, and then you come out of this. It's funny because you're all hyped up, but you want to always make sure you don't trip over anything when you're coming through the smoke. So that's the biggest piece of that, is just making sure, hey, I know where my guys are. I have a little space, so I'm not trip over anybody. I'm good. Hearing and seeing it's freaking awesome.
So, and then you're playing in which is a traditionally basketball conference, but growing into a football conference as well, playing in the ACC against the likes of Florida States, the Virginia Techs. Well, I don't know if Virginia Tech was in there at the time. Playing with Duke, the NC States, Georgia Tech. What was it like going out there every week with guys like that?
It was just awesome, because you're playing some of the best guys in the nation. And week in, week out, you're playing first round, second round, third round picks. And so you're testing yourself and seeing, hey, can I do this? Can I actually compete against these guys? And for me, it was, hey, I was a 0-star coming out of Virginia until North Carolina offered me, and I turned into a 2-star. And then you got guys that are 5-stars from day one. So it was just awesome to be able to compete against all those different guys.
So Coach Bunton leaves, and then you get another coach in there with some NFL credibility and some big school credibility at Miami, Florida. Butch Davis. What was it like playing for Coach Davis?
He's been around, so he's got a lot of knowledge and experience. He's definitely going to do everything he can for his players. He's going to give you the best gear. He's going to make sure you have everything you need to be successful. That was awesome. And then he brought along Sam Pittman. I came in with Hal Hunter, had Mark Weber as my second offensive line coach, and then Sam Pittman was my third offensive line coach in 3 years. But he was able to stay my third, fourth, and fifth year. So I got to build that relationship with him, and he's obviously the head coach at Arkansas and doing a great job there. But
yeah,
he was just that's the best thing about Coach Davis. He brought in some great coaches with him, and I'll just thank him for that, bringing Sam Pittman, because again, I went from nothing to something under Sam Pittman. So
had to be kind of special for you guys. Coach Davis's old team, Miami, Florida. You guys get a win over them. I'm sure he had a few things to say after that game to you about beating his old team in Miami, Florida. What was it like getting that win over Miami?
Well, I can also say as a starter, I'm 3-0 against Miami. So never lost to him as a starter. But no, it was awesome being able to go down there and play in places like the Orange Bowl, and just playing, getting that experience and that nostalgia of just thinking about, hey, who's played in this bowl. And but again, Coach Davis, I think for him, it was a little bit more to it than just, hey, a win or a loss. He had a little bit of metal behind it. But for us, it was, hey, we're just going to take everything he's got. And we're just, hey, for us, it's just another game. Got to go 1-0 that week. But again, it was really awesome just because a lot of those games that we played, not a lot of blowouts on us winning. So a lot of those games that we won were closer games. So it's
Yeah.
always great to get a close win in an away game.
Yeah. So talk about what your quarterback that was there majority of the time you were there, TJ Yates. What was it like playing with TJ Yates? Yates goes on, has a pretty decent career in the NFL. But what was it like playing with TJ Yates?
It was just awesome. He's a super smart guy, knew what was going on, and he's one of those guys that wanted to be around the offensive line all the time. So we just had a great camaraderie with him. What a lot of people don't know about him though is he was actually a basketball guy first.
Oh, really? I
So
didn't know that.
yeah, I believe he had a scholarship offer for basketball before he actually got one for football. So he actually embraced the North Carolina basketball aspect of
Wow.
too. So around him and
So Coach Davis starts turning the program around. You guys, your junior year, you beat 3 top 25 teams. You end up going to your first bowl game, the Meineke Car Care Bowl. What was it like going to that bowl game for the first time? What was it like the whole week of bowl week? Because I know you guys got a lot going on, but did it kind of feel overwhelming, or was it like, did Coach Davis keep you guys grounded enough where, okay, don't fall into it and do too much, enjoy yourself, but we still got to concentrate on the game?
I think he did a good balance of letting us experience and not let us get overwhelmed, but it's tough. If you're a player that's never really been to a bowl game, you're a team that hasn't been to one in a while, then as a young guy, when you're not playing, you don't have that experience. So that's where I think a lot of good teams, they stay good because those young guys that aren't playing, they know how to handle going to a bowl game. But for us, I thought it was a little overwhelming as far as just all the events you got going on. You want it to be a vacation. You want it to be a bonus game, but you still want to end the season on a win. But again, so you got to try to, as a player, balance it out. And that being my first one, I wasn't able to, as far as that goes. I was just kind of trying to do a little bit too much of everything. And obviously we didn't win the game, but I thought it was a good game.
Yeah.
And then Hakeem had a heck of a catch in that game, right on the one leg. And
Yeah,
as a left tackle,
definitely.
As a left tackle, I had the perfect seat in the house for that one because I was right in front of the left tackle. So it was awesome catch.
Yeah, you guys barely lose West Virginia 31-30. And then your senior year, you go back. But first, talk about, I wanted to see, what is the bigger rivalry for you guys in football now? I mean, you got the Duke game with the victory bell, but there's also that NC State rivalry. Which one is the bigger rivalry, you think, NC State or Duke with Carolina?
So for me, when it comes to football, I'll say NC State all day long. I don't know what it is. I don't know why it is, but we just had more, I guess, back and forth with NC State than we did with Duke. Because for a long time we just had the victory bell for a really long time. Now Duke's gotten better and it's kind of gone back and forth. But just while I was there and before I was there, it was a lot of, hey, Carolina just beats Duke. Carolina beats Duke, whether it's a close game or a blowout. That's what it was. So it was just for me playing NC State. That was the bigger rival. I hate that red. I hate that wolf sound. I hate that. I hate this. Whatever it is, I can't stand it. Yeah, I can't stand it. Anything about NC State. So
you end up going back to the Meineke Car Care Bowl again in Charlotte. So you guys don't really take a big trip. I mean, you're just down the road to Charlotte. But did you feel like you were, this year you talked about you tried to do too many of the events and stuff like that going around? Did you feel like, okay, going to that, I'm not going to do that this year. I'm going to concentrate more on the game. This is what we're here for, is to get the win. I'm not going to do all that stuff this year.
Yeah, and maybe it wasn't just I'm going to do too much stuff. It was just kind of a shell shock because I've never done it before. This year, obviously, my senior is what we're going through. So hey, let's finish this one with a win. Even though we're going to same bowl game, let's go get this dub. So yeah, it was a lot more of that. It was a lot more business like for a lot of our players, especially the older ones that had lost the year before.
And you guys just barely lose to Pitt in that game. So you're in the locker room after that game. It's over at Carolina. What was it? What was your feeling like when you know it's over at Carolina? You don't know you might have a chance in the NFL, but your career at Carolina is over. What was that like?
Well, it took me a while to get to the locker room. I stayed on the sideline, helmet on, crying a little bit, just because hey, 5 years had been or 4.5 had been amazing, and then also never knowing that I was going to play again or not play again. So it took me a while. Probably 20 minutes after the game, I went in there, and I think the head coach kind of knew with the seniors he was going to take a little while, but then it was just you really don't think about it once you get in the locker room. It was kind of just like walking around saying, "Hey, I appreciate everybody on the team." A lot of hugs, a lot of crying, just from the seniors to the underclassmen, because blood, sweat, and tears. 4 years with these guys, 3 years. Even some of the freshmen that you've mentored as a senior, they're emotional just because now it's like their big brother's leaving. So it's a lot of that kind of going on. Coaches that you got great relationships with, where you're hugging and crying and just saying, "Hey, coach, I appreciate you for everything." So it's a lot of that going on. And then kind of once you wear that off, it's like, hey, the world ain't ended. It's just, hey, maybe my football career is over. And then it's on to bigger and better things, hopefully.
What were you hearing as far as NFL teams? I mean, combine. Were there any teams that were looking at you, had called you or anything? Or what was the process there?
I went to the next nation, also, which El Paso. It was the NFLPA game before they moved it out to California. So I went out there, and we had a bunch of scouts that you do the Wonder Lake. They do all the heights and weights and those type things, and you're getting coached by really good coaches. Most of them are former NFL coaches, so you're getting there, and they're giving you some good advice. And then, luckily, after that game, I got invited to the combine. So I went up to the combine. I was there for 4 days. Actually, some of the worst days of your life. Those days are miserable because getting up at 5 a.m., you're not going to bed till 11, 12 p.m. or 12 a.m. And you're just always doing something, whether it's this personality test, that personality test, whether you're going through the medical rooms where they're twisting and torquing you, and then they wait 20 minutes for the next room, and now you're sore from the guy before, and then all the other tests that they put you through, and then finally your last day when you're the most tired, they're like, "Hey, now you got to go do all the testing. Now you got to do the position drills." And obviously, it's by design that way. They want to see who can push through it. But again, it's one of those things that's very taxing, mentally as well as physically.
I can't imagine. So when did you find out that you were going to be a Pittsburgh Steeler?
So my agent and I, he was in his office. I was at my parents' house, and we were kind of watching back and forth the draft. And then I knew I was kind of on that verge that I might get drafted, might not get drafted. So every offensive lineman that was picked, I would go and write it down and say, okay, this team picked this person or this position. And more of the time, I try to be like, okay, is he a center? Is he a guard center? Is he a guard tackle? What type of I kind of mark that down to know where some teams might be light. And then the fourth round, you start to get some calls saying, "Hey, if nothing works out here, if you don't have to," and my agent and I were on our landlines back when people actually had landlines, and so all the teams were calling me on my cell phone. They were calling him on a cell phone. I ended up getting drafted, and I ended up getting offered 22 teams to go play for him, and ended up kind of looking through, hey, who might be the best fit, and kind of just landing on Pittsburgh.
Gotta ask you, first impressions when you get to Pittsburgh. I mean, I can only imagine. That's on my bucket list to go one day. But what was it like getting into Pittsburgh?
It was just awesome. And the first, like, you don't really think about it. Like, okay, you get picked up in the airport with the other rookies, and you're okay, it's cool. And you're like, okay, well, that guy played at that school, that guy played at that school. And then it's really like the next day where you go into the facility, and the first guy I ended up meeting was Troy Polamalu. And
Oh,
it was
wow.
awesome. And it was
Wow.
awesome. And so I had longer hair than I did now. And so we kind of joked around about hair stuff. And I didn't have the full beard. I just had the little goatee. And his first thing is he called me, he's like, "Hey, have you ever seen the Big Lebowski?" I'm like, "Yeah." He goes, "Well, you're the dude." And so he called me the dude. Ever since then, he called me the dude. And it was awesome. And he's one of the most quiet, just quiet, most soft-spoken people, but hilarious, and he's a good dude. But yeah, that's really where it was. Is like you walk in the locker room and you see all these big name guys. Or you see Ben, you see Troy, you see Ike Taylor, you see James Harrison. That's really where it's like, oh wow, I'm here.
Yeah, definitely. That Troy is one. Probably he's right up there. Not my favorite Steeler. He's like my second favorite Steeler of all time. Jack Ham's my favorite Steeler of all time. But wow, to get to meet Troy the first day, good Lord, I don't know what I would do. What was Mike Tomlin like? What was it like to play for Coach Tomlin?
He's definitely a player's coach, super high energy, super emotional guy, and that's the best part. But he's also got, sitting back there, because he was a young defender and type thing. So he's a really smart guy, but just high energy, high motivation guy, which is just awesome to play for him.
And then, uh, like I asked you about coming out to Keenan Stadium, and I can only imagine being in that tunnel at Heinz Field, getting ready to come out with all these guys with you. I can't imagine what that must have been like for you.
And the coolest part is, like, you come out and then now you see the terrible towels going, and you're just like, okay, like you're like, I've seen this on TV before. You kind of look around and you're like, I've seen this on TV before, but now you're like, okay, I'm actually here. And it's at points it's kind of surreal, because if you had a dream to get there since you were a little kid, you're living it. Um, and it's just a crazy but awesome experience all at the same time.
Now, as practice time comes around, and you were there around the time you mentioned the Polomalos, the James Harrisons, the Ike Taylors. What was it like practicing against these guys? Because I imagine, Harrison, and you're on the offensive line. Harrison's there. I think Farrier, uh, Foot, who was the Woodley. What was it like
Yeah.
playing it? And then you had Brett Kiesel and you had Aaron Smith. What was it like going up against these guys in practice?
You're definitely gonna have to get better. You're gonna have to bring your A game every day, especially against Harrison. I don't know if you know this, but Farrier is actually from like 20 minutes away from my hometown. He went to Matoaka High School, so
Right.
that's actually right down the street. So he's a VA boy, but no, it was just awesome. And really, when you're playing left tackle and you got James Harrison over, that's really where you gotta bring it, because he's a journeyman, as far as he's been through getting cut, and he knows what it takes to actually get on the roster. He's been through all the battles, and that's one guy that doesn't take a practice off, doesn't really take a play off. So that's one where, okay, yeah, I'm playing left tackle today. Well, I gotta make sure I bring it, because he's gonna bring it every day. He's gonna bring it every play. He's gonna make me look terrible if I don't. So that's the one guy where you're like, uh-oh. But but again, Brett Kiesel and Aaron Smith and Casey Hampton, those guys are three studs.
Yes.
They all three did it for a long time. So it's, yeah, but again, what they are is what they're going to do is go, hey, when you're in your stance, you're doing this. I know you're doing this. So they're giving you tips to make you a better player, which was awesome. Aaron Smith was awesome at it. He just wanted everybody to be better. So anything he saw, he'd be like, hey, I know you're doing this because of this, or when you do this, when I do this, you need to do this. And it's cool when defensive linemen are actually giving you tips to be better. So
That's pretty awesome. All right, I got to ask you this because we're coming to the end of his career now. Apparently, playing with Big Ben, what was Big Ben like?
he's an awesome guy. Everything I was around, he was a generous guy. He would always try to help you out whenever he could or whatever you needed. So I have nothing but respect and good memories with him. I actually ended up going to his wedding because I think he invited the entire team at that point, but I was up in Pittsburgh at the time, so got to go to his wedding and see that extravaganza. Um, and kind of it was just a good time being on the same team with him. But hopefully he's got a little bit of magic left in that arm and that hand so that he can get the job done at least one more game.
I hope, and if you look at the situation, and you can't help but look back at 2005 when they had to win all these games to get to the playoffs. They went on the road every playoff game and got to the Super Bowl. Nobody was giving them a chance. And even with this Chiefs game, if you look at this, they played the Colts 2005. A few weeks earlier, they played at Indianapolis, got their tails tore up by Indianapolis, and they came back and beat them. Same situation here with Kansas City. I'm not saying there's a little bit of karma out there.
You're not saying, but you are saying, right? You're not saying, but you are saying.
I'm saying just watch out. Watch out. Stranger things have happened.
You're right. No doubt about it.
There is two teams that I absolutely despise in the NFL. One of them is the Patriots, and the other one, as a Steelers fan, if you don't despise this team, you're not a Steelers fan. The Ravens. What was it like being in the middle of that Steelers-Ravens rivalry, which I think is probably, no offense to Carolina and Duke basketball, but that rivalry is probably the best rivalry in sports today. I mean, it's so intense.
I think you're going to have a lot of arguments from a lot of people, just because obviously their teams are in it. But no, I think it's more about the AFC North. Like you're talking about Pittsburgh and Baltimore, but again, that's that's known for being physical and just being able to run the ball, playing hard-nosed defense, and if you can survive that, then you'll be able to survive all the other teams and kind of go from there. That's really what it is. And seeing us do well against them, and just playing Terrell Suggs and against Ray Lewis and those other, just watching our guys freaking go out there and do it. And obviously both cities are cold places, and so these teams that you're playing in Miami on a Sunday in December versus a Sunday in December in Baltimore or in Pittsburgh, and knowing just the degree of cold that they're playing in, saying, hey, how much more does that hit hurt because it's cold outside? But again, they're not backing down, and it's kind of cool.
That one of my favorite games, that AFC playoff game, the year that you went to the Super Bowl against the Packers, against the Ravens. I mean, it comes down to the very end. Antonio Brown makes an incredible catch up against his helmet to get you guys in score range. But what's it like playing in Heinz Field, especially? And I'm gonna get to this part in a minute, but playoff game in Heinz Field against the Ravens. What is it like hearing that crowd like that? And in just a few minutes, I'll ask you about another thing I just got reminded of, but just talk about that playoff atmosphere.
And again, I don't necessarily know if there's really a difference between Heinz Field and regular season and playoffs. It's that good of a home field advantage. And obviously there's the Three Rivers Casino right down the street. So all those fans, they're making sure they're lubed up before they come in the games. And of sports fan, their sports extremely like to have a good time while they're doing it. And so the later the game gets, the more rowdy that crowd's going to be, and the better it's going to be for a home field advantage. So it's just it's just awesome.
All right, this is what I was going to ask you. How loud does that place get when Renegade comes on?
If you're probably standing there, I probably wouldn't be able to hear what you're saying. You'd have to tap me and be like, "Hey, I'm trying to ask you something." You wouldn't be able to hear nothing. So it gets pretty dang loud.
So you guys get to the Super Bowl. You guys beat the Jets in the AFC Championship game. You're going to the Super Bowl. Super Bowl week. We talked about Bowl week. How crazy was Super Bowl week compared to Bowl week?
It's awesome because you're at the Super Bowl, but it's not as crazy because you're there just for the game. You don't have to really do anything outside of practice and anything that you would normally do. So it's actually easier because you're not obligated to do this, that, and the other. Coolest thing about the entire Super Bowl was actually getting to get my family to come out there and go with us. So I got to tell my dad, "Hey, I'm going to get you a trip to the Super Bowl." And obviously that was a bucket list item for him. And so that was really cool.
That had to be cool. But what was it like walking out on that field I mean, you got thousands and thousands of people there watching you, and then you got millions watching you on TV. What was it like getting out on that field, though? I mean, it had to be pretty electric getting out on that field.
Yeah, and again, so it was one of the first times Jerry's World was used, and so when you actually walk out for pregame warmups, you walk out through a bar, and
Yeah.
they have plexiglass that shields everybody from you, and you walk through a bar, and it's an amazing experience. That jumbotron really is that big, but you feel like a caged animal in a zoo in that type of environment just because of how they've used the luxury boxes and so much plexiglass, and you feel like you are like a caged gorilla as far as like you can almost walk up, put your hand up there, and they're going to put their hand up to the glass as well. But that's kind of it's a cool experience to be there, and I know it's only gotten bigger and better since I was there, but it's a spectacle.
Definitely. I hated you guys come up short on that, but you can't win them all. But all right, talk a little bit about what you're doing now. I know you've been in the college coaching ranks for a little while, but talk a little bit about what you're doing now.
Yeah, so I jumped both feet in and started coaching in college. Did 8 years in college, coached at Old Dominion as a graduate assistant, went to University of Washington as a graduate assistant under Chris Peterson. With that one, I actually got to go to a college football playoff. So got to bring my family to that one as well. So it's another bucket list item there. And then I went to a Division II school in West Virginia because my girlfriend was like, "Hey, you need to get your butt back on the East Coast." And then I jumped over to VMI, Virginia Military Institute. Obviously, Coach Tomlin coached there as well for a little bit, so that was kind of cool. But my dad was a alumnus of that school, so it was cool to be there. We actually had our first conference championship in 1977, so to be a part of that was just awesome. And then ended up getting married in the spring of this year. I did med school at the spring of this year, so she matched in residency at Tampa. And so when that happened, I was like, okay, I'm going to resign. And then we moved down to Tampa with our 2 dogs, and I jumped into being a high school coach down here. And I'm enjoying life. It's tank tops and board shorts every day of the week, so I love it.
Yeah, don't rub it in. I'm up here in Carolina. We're getting ready to feel the wrath of I think a winter storm coming this weekend. So don't rub it in about tank tops and shorts, all that, buddy. All right. I'm gonna ask you a few quick hitting questions that I know you're a busy man and you got to go. Toughest opponent you went up against. And it can be you can have one in college and in the pros, and it can be more than one. But what are some of the toughest opponents you went up against?
And do you mean as a player?
What? You broke up a little bit on me there. What'd you say?
Do you mean as a single player, or
as a single player, what you're going up against?
All right, so this is kind of a weird answer for you. Both of them were on my team.
I don't doubt it.
One in college was Robert Quinn.
I
So
remember
I'm a starter, and so every day in practice I'm sitting there, I'm just freaking getting whiplash. He's freaking running by me. For me because I'm playing freaking stud first rounder, 6'5", 270, kicking my butt every day. So he just made it easy for me. And then obviously when it came to, like I said earlier, James Harrison never took a day off. So I would say he's probably the toughest that I went to up there, especially just because he's a little shorter, but he's way stronger than everybody. So he's able to get up underneath you and lift you up. So that was his move. He always lifted up these big offensive tackles because they had to bend down to try to block him.
All right. Outside of Heinz Field and Keenan Stadium, favorite place to play?
So I'll give you one scenario of why this is my favorite. It was one of my last games, Thursday night at Virginia Tech, Lane Stadium. It was rocking, but we won the game, so that's why it's my favorite there. But it's also my favorite just because they said, hey, they didn't want to recruit me coming out of high school. And so they were saying I wasn't good enough. So, hey, I left my stamp on it and said, hey, we beat them my senior year on Thursday night. And so it was awesome.
Yeah, beating a team like that on Thursday night. Those Thursday night games are a little bit more special than a regular Saturday game to me. All right, least favorite place to play?
I kind of would go with Duke as far as there's not a great environment. And now it might be better now. So Wallace Wade Stadium, I believe that's what it's called. It's just there's not a ton of fan buy-in. Now, obviously, it's been 12 years, whatever, 13 years, whatever it's been. But just there, it was like, okay, it's a casual game day. And that's why I didn't like it. Because, again, I could care less if I got the fans booing me, as long as the fans are engaged and locked in. And that boo kind of got me going a little bit. But there was just a lack of that going on.
All right, we'll leave off with this. Favorite memory or memories that you had in your playing career?
Again, it's probably one of them's probably just definitely being there with my dad at the Super Bowl, because I knew that was a big thing for him and as well for me. Because how many football players want to say that they participated in a Super Bowl? Well, regardless of that, how many people want to say they went to a Super Bowl?
Exactly.
Regardless of playing in it. And then I was on the team that went there, regardless if we won or lost, but I was a part of the team that went there. And that's just a huge piece to me. And then another one would probably be the day that I got called and got offered a scholarship to the University of North Carolina. It was kind of funny. I was in a science class. My phone was in my bag. My phone went off. I saw that it was my recruiter. It was Andre Powell. He was the running backs coach at the time. I looked down and I was like, I can't answer it. And so he called, left a voicemail, and so the bell rang for next class, and the next teacher that was coming into that classroom was my head coach's wife. And I was like, hey, do you mind? My recruiter just called me. She's like, no, call him. And so I heard it, and I ended up calling him back about it. But she was the first one that actually found out I got offered a scholarship to the University of North Carolina. With my head coach's wife. So it was awesome.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome there. Well, Mr. Jolly, I'm not going to take any more of your time. Like I said before, thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule to do this, to come in and talk a little bit. Loved hearing the stories. We got to do it again sometime and talk.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, we'll maybe if things work out, we can come back on. We'll be talking about Big Ben and Pittsburgh going to the Super Bowl this year. Hopefully that'll work out that way.
There you go. See if he's got the magic.
That's right. He may still have it. Thank you so much again, sir. And we really appreciate you coming on. And good luck to your next football season. And we'll be keeping up with you.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
All right, guys. That is Kyle Jolly on the Final Score.